Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. There is a place in South Dakota, Keystone, South Dakota, called Mount Rushmore. From 1927 to 1941, a gentleman named Gutzon Borglum decided to make a giant mountain with a bunch of old-ass presidents on them, and they are still there. And I hear it's smaller than you think it is. The purpose of the memorial is to communicate the founding, expansion, preservation, and unification of the United States with colossal statues of Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Theodore Roosevelt. Now, a lot of times, people will make their Mount Rushmore of X. So your Mount Rushmore of professional wrestlers, your Mount Rushmore of video games and movies and directors and everything, but those usually end up being just like a top four, like the top four best things, but that is not why Mount Rushmore is up there in South Dakota. He picked these specific presidents for specific reasons to represent specific things. So what are we gonna do with that information? We gonna learn today, and then we are going to put together my Mount Rushmore of board games. Now, the beauty of this is that any other person in history and any other person watching this will have their own personal Mount Rushmore based on their experiences. 10 years later, Mount Rushmore might have been someone different. The beauty of this is that the Mount Rushmore is a work of art specific to that person as a gift to the nation. So let's learn a little bit about Mount Rushmore while we take a trip down memory lane and learn what my Mount Rushmore of board gaming is. Ladies and gentlemen, America. Fuck yeah.
He'll save children, but not the British children. He'll save children, but not the British children.
First up, we have Whig extraordinaire, born 1732 and died in 1799. Ladies and gentlemen, your first president of these United States, General George Washington. Now, Borglum picked George Washington specifically because he wanted him to be the most prominent figure on the front of the mountain and wanted him to represent the birth of the United States. So in that direction, we are going to talk about my birth of board gaming. Now, as a kid, you and myself and everyone, we played the Sorries and the Lifes and the Monopolies and the Skibbos and the Unos and all those things, but that's just general child games. Before we got into the hobby, there was 3 games that popped up and only one that made me want to play more. The first game that we played was a little game that everyone's played, given or taken, and that's Munchkin. And I remember my friend bringing over Munchkin and me playing and going, that's all right, it's a card game. I played card games, I played Uno, nothing new, big whoop. The next game we played was Fantasy Flight's Arkham Horror 2nd edition, and that was the second real board game that I ever played, and god damn it, all I kept thinking as we were watching was, where's Batman? I thought this was Arkham. I don't know what the fuck, what is a Lovecraft? What? But eventually that led me to a rabbit hole, which, I do love Lovecraft now. I don't own Arkham Horror, I own Eldritch Horror, and it's très bien, chef's kiss. But then we played another game. We played a game that was the introduction to a lot of things. So Munchkin was a card game. Whatever, I played card games. Arkham Horror was kind of an adventure game. So what? I played video games. It's just moving things around a board, no big deal. It's nothing new. But then there was another game that looked boring, didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before, and as soon as we got done playing it, I wanted to play it again. It was my first introduction to what a meeple was. It was my first introduction to what a tile laying game was, and it was my first introduction to the wide, wide world of boring ass box art. Ladies and gentlemen, first up on the Mount Rushmore of my board gaming, which represents the birth of my interest in the hobby, is Carcassonne. Carcassonne? Carcassonne? No. This little game about you building some random shit in France just sparked my imagination, and it had below expectations. And then after we were done playing it, I was like, oh, I get it. I could put a tile. Oh, little meeples. Things I'd never seen before. I'd never seen meeples. I'd never played a tile laying game. I've never seen the concept of like victory points, really. Sure, you play to a score in Munchkin, but victory points. And I move my little dude up and I get points. And then I could use these points or this points or this points or that points. And I was just, it was amazing. I loved it. It was great. And that was the birth of me into the hobby. And woo, it spawned all of this. This whole channel is all because of Carcassonne. And it's a game that I still love to this day. It's one of the best tile laying games, period. There's been so many expansions that I don't even really care to keep up with it. But it spawned things like Tang Garden and literally any other tile laying game you can think of was because of Carcassonne. And a nice little wraparound is George Washington fought in the Revolutionary War. And who were our allies in the Revolutionary War? Ladies and gentlemen, France. They helped us out. And then here we are. But later they'd fuck up later. But forget later. We're talking now. So first up, on the Mount Rushmore, Carcassonne!
Sound familiar? I told King George he could eat a fat pig. When it comes to declarations, I'm the first.
Next up, born 1743 and died in 1826, it's Yarida, extraordinaire of the Constitution of the America. No, wait, international, we gotta steal the Declaration of Independence. Mr. Thomas Jefferson. Now, Mr. Borglum chose Thomas Jefferson to represent the growth of the United States. And in that vein, the growth of my interest in the hobby started at a little place called Carcassonne, and sure, kind of dwelled City of Thieves, a couple of things, City of Iron, play some Axis and Allies, that kind of thing. But the growth of the hobby for me to understand that it was more than just me sitting playing by myself is a little game that seems a little, it is what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, Pandemic. Pandemic is a co-op game, the quintessential co-op game in which you and your players are trying to save the world from a bunch of goddamn diseases. If only it were that easy. Now this game was my growth. So I saw this as, oh, games can be co-ops. They can be more than just that. It can be so much more. So the idea of playing a game with other people and having a different thing than just winning victory points, that really opened up my eyes to really what the board gaming as I knew it could be. Growth is another term for rebirth. And that's interesting because the birth of my hobby gave way to the growth of the hobby, and both of them are starting blocks that took me to the next level. So ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Declaration of Independence has provided Pandemic, the game, not the thing. That is the second game on my personal Mount Rushmore. He was also the third president of the United States.
Good Lord, Lawrence, why are you slapping a monkey?
Next up, hailing all the way back from 1858 to death in 1919, Mr. 26 himself, Theodore Roosevelt, known as the Thruster Buster. This gentleman was put on Mount Rushmore to represent the development of the United States, for the industrial boom and the rapid economic growth that happened during that time. And the game that kind of matches along with that represented the development in my board gaming is Seven Wonders. Seven Wonders is a drafting game, and once again, like we have the birth and the rebirth in this is another jumping point, another milestone that represents the development of the board games. And not really board games in general, but my idea of what a board game can be. What it can be is everyone has their hand of cards, they take a card, they put it down, they pass the cards on. This is called drafting, ladies and gentlemen, which seems appropriate for a man who came around during one of the damn world wars. So this is one of those things that is just insane. Now, I don't have Seven Wonders proper, I do have Seven Wonders Dual, and it's just one of those games that is so easy to play, so easy to teach, and it's just making so many more board gamers love the hobby, and so many more non-gamers come into the hobby. It's one of those things where it's just, they've taken existing things as victory points and player powers and all these things, and they're just changing them ever so slightly into a game that everyone can play. Is it one of the 4 greatest games of all time? No, but remember, that's not what this is. This is a game that represents my development as a gamer into this hobby, and it's one of those things, again, that after I played it, I was like, wow, there's still so much out there that I don't know, and so many different types of games that can be made. And that is the game that I played, and it's great. And number 7 from number 26 goes in the 3rd slot of Mount Rushmore. Kaboosh.
Be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes!
Here we come to the end. The 16th President of the United States, and most likely the second president that anyone will ever learn. We put Mr. Washington on the 1, on the next bill, we're not counting the second $2 bill, whatever, but on the next bill, which is the 5, we put Mr. Lincoln. Born 1809, died 1865 to an assassin's bullet, Mr. Abraham Lincoln. This gentleman was the president during the Civil War, which was really bad, really bad, really bad. Slavery is bad. Lincoln thought so, I think so, you should think so. And Mr. Gorblum put Mr. Lincoln on that mountain to represent the preservation of the United States. Lincoln died to preserve the idea that every man in this country should be a free man, regardless of creed or color. And the game that I have doesn't really represent that necessarily, but it represents my preservation into the hobby. So something that kept me in the hobby. And any time that I get swayed or pulled in crappy different directions, if I play a shitty board game or a great board game, there's always one board game that I will hold on to forever now, and it is my reason for staying in the hobby. We had The Birth, which was Carcassonne. We had my rebirth into Pandemic, and my rebirth into Seven Wonders. But the thing that keeps me in this hobby forever, and the thing that I can always go back to in the middle for my personal Mount Rushmore, is Last Night on Earth. Ladies and gentlemen, Last Night on Earth is not a great game. It's barely a good game, but it is a game that I love. It imprinted on me very early into the hobby. It is a game that just represents the preservation, it holds on to the idea of what board gaming can be. Fun, dumb dice chuckers where I'm playing cards and moving dudes around a map to do shotguns and just read stuff and have a good time. It's the epitome of why I do not take board gaming too seriously. And when I play a game, I don't necessarily play to win, I play to play. That idea came from Last Night on Earth, that I just enjoy playing games with my friends. I enjoy the experience of sitting down with my family to play a shitty game more than I would playing a phenomenal game with people who are fucking terrible. Ladies and gentlemen, last on the list, the last face, Mr. Lincoln would not be proud. He wouldn't even understand, because wait a minute. Abraham Lincoln zombie hunter? No, he was a vampire hunter. Never mind, he wouldn't understand, so we're gonna put Last Night on Earth in my last slot. So ladies and gentlemen, let us recap. George Washington, father of our country, first president of the United States, has been Carcassonne. Mr. Thomas Jefferson, writer of the Declaration of Independence, and responsible for 2 great Nicolas Cage movies. And our third president was Pandemic. And Mr. Theodore Roosevelt, Mr. Industrial Revolution, turn of the century, he is Seven Wonders, and a wonder in of himself. And last but not least, Mr. Civil War, Mr. John Wilkes Booth, deterrent. Abraham Lincoln is Last Night on Earth. That is my personal Mount Rushmore of board gaming. Now, it might not be the best. I will say that Carcassonne, there are better games than Carcassonne, but I'll play it anytime. Pandemic is kind of worn out. Everything is now trying to be Pandemic. Even Pandemic tried being Pandemic with Pandemic Legacy and the Cthulhu Pandemic and the Iberia. Seven Wonders is still really good, and Seven Wonders Duel is great. I'd love an expansion to that. And Last Night on Earth, I love it. I do love it. It's just all these games represent milestones in my board gaming life, like those presidents represent milestones in the life of America. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to have a conversation with you real quick. Now, as a nation, we are not doing a great job, but I want you to know that we are a people who will strive and thrive. I count myself as a Texan first and an American second because that's what Texans do. But please, look to your fellow man. Understand that we are in some hard times. Hard times, son of a plumber. And we'll get through it. So ladies and gentlemen, this has been my Mount Rushmore of gaming. Check the curls. What I'd like you to do is drop a little comment in that little box downstairs and let me know what your Mount Rushmore of gaming is. I don't care what you think about mine, because mine is mine. And yours is yours, and it's a personal story, a personal journey, and who knows, maybe the game that got you into gaming is Munchkin, and as much as you hate to admit it now with your pretentious self, you might put it on your Mount Rushmore. Who knows? I heard they were going to put a fifth guy up there, and that it wasn't just supposed to be faces, it was supposed to be full all this, but it never happened because they ran out of money. That is the story of America. We have big ideas and big appetites, but we always run out of money. Ladies and gentlemen, wash your goddamn hands. God bless America, because we kind of need it right now. Peace out.
America.